Oh, right.
Yes, we're live. We're live, Daka.
Wee.
We're live for episode 3 of the podcast. Um, we're off to a slow start on the Sunday morning.
Yes.
But we have a special guest today, PopstarPaci, here to join us to talk about everything Blade and Soul related news, PvE, PvP, all that good stuff. So, Posse, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into Blade and Soul, who are you, and why do you have such an interest in the game?
Well, I'm Passy. I used to be a League streamer, but I stream BnS now. I actually used to play Terra online, and when I got really bored with the game, I heard about the Chinese open beta for Blade and Soul, so I played with that with some Terra friends. And then I switched to KR, switched to Japan, quit, and then moved to Taiwan and got really into it once I heard about the official NA release. And did my best to learn all the content I can possibly to start creating guides and content for the community because I really wanted to help out because I was really excited.
Yes, indeed, and Pachi has made 2 very, very detailed and interesting guides. She's put a lot of work into them. One of them is going to be going through the Black Ram supply chain, the Poharan dungeon, and the other one is a general FAQ for new players in Blade and Soul that answers a whole slew of questions about gearing, about PvP, about PvE, about everything you would ever need to know. So we're gonna go look over that later on in the podcast and take a closer look. But before we do that, we're going to be talking about some news. And keep in mind that as the show progresses, we will be taking in viewer questions and be answering them during our PvP segment of the podcast towards the end. So any question you want doesn't have to be PvP related. As long as you guys have a curiosity, we will answer them. And if you ask which class is the most overpowered or which class does the most damage, we will give you a very generic answer of all the classes have their special properties and their benefits. Everybody's a special snowflake. Something like that. Daka, why don't we talk about our first, or rather, probably the only big relevant news topic that has happened within the last week that we, between the time we had our last podcast and now. That's on February 10th. NCSoft has announced that they will be releasing new content.
Right. So, what's the first one again?
The
Sorry,
What's that?
it's a slow start for me today
Oh my
as
gosh.
well.
You know, when I woke up this morning, I rolled out of bed, I felt like death itself. I felt like I had become the man with the scythe, and it is a very slow start. So, February 10th, NCSoft announced that they will be releasing Bloodshade Harbor,
Right.
and alongside that, they're going to be providing us with Home Moon levels up to 45 plus 5.
Will they be also giving us Lucien Tower?
Yes, Lucien Tower 1 through 7. So we won't actually be able to go to the 8th floor. Everything I would like to mention, by the way, Daka, there's a few things that you said on the last show that were golden, right? One of them was your predictions for the PvP tournament, and the other was your predictions for NCSoft's release of content, their pacing, and I think you hit it on the dot. You expected them to release 1 through 7, you expected BSH to come out at the same time, and you expected it within that 2-week time period, and lo and behold, the official release came out, and that was exactly how it was. So BSH 45 plus 5, Lucien 1 to 7, and also alongside the BSH release, they're going to have Home Moon skills. So why don't we talk about first BSH as a dungeon and rather Bloodshade Harbor. I keep shortening it for you guys, but BSH as a dungeon, what we can expect there. How is it different? How is it similar to Poharan?
I'd say it's a lot similar to Poharan, but a lot more interesting mechanics as well. There's some, you have to use your environments to your advantage. There's of course the wall run sections where you can skip mobs and stuff.
There's a good amount of platforming, right?
Yes, but in general, I'd say the length of the dungeon is pretty much the same, if not longer, than Poharan.
Yes, it certainly feels a little bit longer. Do you have any thoughts about that, Paci?
I would say, honestly, in my opinion, is I think it's easier than Poe. I don't know
Okay,
why.
that's interesting.
The only reason I think it's a lot easier is because the mini bosses in between don't seem as mechanically intensive as the mini bosses in Poe. Like with the assassin in Poe and the force master in Poe, there's a lot of different mechanics that you have to pay attention to in order to not fight. The mini bosses in BSH seem a lot easier, in my opinion.
Now, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of the mini bosses that are involved in BSH, and the first one is a pig guy in front of the first boss, and you just kind of beat him up, right?
Yeah.
Some other ones you can skip. Yeah, but I think you're right. Most of the mini bosses seem a little more straightforward. There's the double destroyers, but that might be going into a little more detail. So you feel it is a little easier, at least the mini bosses, but what about the bosses themselves?
Well, I really do like what they did with the double boss, the twins. That one I think will be kind of difficult for especially newer players, trying to understand that you've got to DPS them down at the same rate. If one falls lower, then you've got to switch, because if you kill one before the other, of course, it'll meditate, and if it comes back up, you've got to start all over again. So that one's pretty difficult. Grandpa, I think it is, right?
Yes, Grandpa Poe, or Heimujin, as people, if they want to be formal, would call it, but Grandpa Poe, yes.
That boxing ring can get pretty interesting. I mean, I played it on Taiwan, and I had some pretty, top-tier gear. It was level 50, like Hongman 11 patch or whatever, so we go through it pretty quick, but I've been in parties where it's taken quite a long time, and he does have some pretty hard-hitting AoEs, so...
Yes.
We've got to learn our iframes, friends.
Yes, you definitely have to be very on top of your dodging. And so we'll get to enjoy BSH when it comes out on February 10th, so make sure you're all nice and set with Poharan and your gear is all nice and set, because that will only help you when you take on BSH. Why don't we talk a little bit about these Hongwen skills that are introduced? Well, I guess maybe the first step we should talk about is the Hongwen levels, right? Because those are going to give you the skill points that you need to start picking up these Hongwen skills. Rather, it's not that there's a particular special skill point, but just that you have more, right? So Daka, with the increased levels, how many more points could we expect to see?
If they are following the same system as all the other regions, then we should expect 11 more skill points with Hongwen level 5. So the way Hongwen level works is that the first level you gain 5 skill points. All the odd levels after that you gain 1 skill point, and all the even levels after that you gain 2 skill points. So in total you get a grand total of 11 skill points, which should shake up the PvP scene a lot.
Yes, it'll change a lot of the dynamics of PvP, and for some classes even PvE, I would say, because there are a lot of classes right now that are very starving for points. I mean, some baseline abilities that you would expect certain classes to have, they just don't have the points to get because they need to get some of their DPS things, or if they need to use CC, for example, they might have to sacrifice something else. So the extra 11 points actually goes a very, very long way. And of course, with these extra points, we can get Hongmun skills too, and these are going to be obtained in Bloodshade Harbor. You get them through drops, I suppose, book drops.
I believe so.
Correct.
Book drops, and then when you read the book, it gives you a quest that you have to follow, fairly simple steps, and then after that you get that unlocked. But to skill up these Hongmun skills, it takes 2 points generally instead of 1, and so it could be a little more expensive. So when you, what that means is, even though we get 11 extra points, right, when we take that Hongwen skill, it'll just be that much more pricey. But as Daka mentioned, it will help a lot in PvP. Is there any particular thing you're excited about regarding the Hongwen levels and Hongwen skills for you, Paci?
Honestly, I'm not until 50. A lot of the 50 Hungman skills is where I get really excited just because I played with those the most.
Yes.
When Warlock comes out, though, the BSH Hungman skill is actually pretty interesting. I believe it generates dragon orbs on crit, which lets you keep up dragons a lot more often. So I'm actually pretty excited to learn how to keep dragons up consistency with Warlock.
So Warlock for you is going to be probably the more interesting thing, and we haven't really gotten word about the release of Warlock or even the release of level 50 content, right?
Right.
But hopefully it'll be coming soon, and based on the timing of when BSH is coming out, we can kind of guesstimate. Maybe later on we'll get Daka's predictions again.
Yes.
As he seems to be very accurate about these things. What about for you, Daka? Is there anything exciting for you about 45 plus 5 and homegrown skills?
I'm pretty excited to use all of those extra skill points for all the other stuff I didn't get to use in PvP.
Yes, I agree. And especially for a class like, well, I suppose you're on Blade Dancer, mostly in PvP. In fact, do you actually have any ults?
I do have an ult, but it's still level 1.
Yes, I understand. I understand, Daka. But yes, one of the things that strikes me as the most affected is the Blade Master class, which a lot of people have been talking about as of late. A lot of people are having trouble adapting that into the PvP environment, and with the extra skill points, plus the Homewind skill, which is probably one of the most useful out of all, it gets one of the most useful Homewind skills out of all the classes. The Lightning Draw, I think it's gonna make Blade Masters a lot more.
I call it the nuke draw.
The nuke
Yeah.
draw, yes, it does a lot of damage, so you guys are gonna
GG
have a lot of fun with that when that comes out. So that's all to do with BSH, 45 plus 5 and Homewind skills, but that's not all we're getting on February 10th. That's not all. There's what I think is actually probably what I would consider the nicer change of this patch is the December update in Korea. Changed a lot of the skills. It changed a lot of how the classes play out in PvE and a little bit in PvP too. And they also gave us quality of life updates. So the quality of life update is that in the skill page, they just make it easier to click around. So right now in North America, if you want to unlearn a skill, you have to right-click the point that you want to unlearn, and then to relearn, you have to go ahead and click in individually what you want to change it to. In Korea, now you can actually just click in the tree to where you want where you want to change your skill towards, and it'll automatically redirect the points there. So if you have enough points, it'll automatically take the skill points out of your current tree and then move them over to where you clicked, which is very, very nice quality of life. It makes changing your skill build very easy, which is something you have to do a lot in Blade and Soul. And on top of that, they're giving us these number changes. So why don't we go through some of the effects of these changes? Anything that you want to know off the top of your head, Daka?
Most of them are mostly elemental changes, just to balance out. Like each class has 2 main elements, and then like sometimes one element is favored over the other, and NC is trying to buff the other unfavored element in some classes. For example, we have the Blade Master. Their fire damage, their fire element skills were really lacking compared to their lightning skills, so they buffed all of that. And they also gave life back to... Actually, never mind, this is the January patch, sorry about that. Well, I was about to say they brought back life to Pierce, the stab.
Yes, the right button poke, which was very, very prominent a long time ago in Blade and Soul, but as of late, Blade Masters have been using that home slash button instead. Any other comments that would come to mind, Daka?
The big one is probably Force Master changes, as well as Sumner and Warlock changes.
So the Force Masters actually get revamped quite a bit. I know that a lot of people, when the December patch hit on KR, they were talking about, oh my god, Force Masters are doing so much more damage. But I'm not sure if the reason for that was because of a new home skill. Is that what happened, or what exactly changed for them?
Okay, so they have two new skills they can add. They are passive skills, just like the Lin Blade Master, Lightning and Wind Focus. They got something called, not sure what they're gonna call it in NA, but I believe it'll be something like Fire Focus, Flame Focus, or Frost Focus.
Hmm.
And what that does is basically boosts your fire or ice skills a lot.
Yes. Yes. So it gives Force Masters a lot of impact in PvE. So those of you who are playing Force Masters right now in PvE, you're going to be looking forward to some very exciting things for the class. That was one of the biggest changes. What about for Sumner? Let's go to Paci for Sumner, because that is a class that she plays a lot. Paci, do you have any thoughts about the December skill change for Summoners? Anything you particularly like? Anything you think was a grievance for the class that kind of helped you along?
From reading a little bit, I've only skimmed over it. I haven't actually taken a lot of time to just like sit down and read it. But I believe what they did with Sumner is that they switched how much talent points is needed for certain abilities on. So, for example, their auto attack, I think the Pierce's Parry, you have to spec 4 points down. Now you only have to spec 1, if I'm correct, which is a really big game changer. Because, I mean, especially looking at the points, even when I was on Taiwan, I rarely spec'd into that, just because it's like,
Very
okay,
expensive.
you've gotta, yeah, it's really, really expensive. So I like that they changed a lot of the points around. I think they got a little bit of a damage buff. Other than that, I'm not quite sure what else they did, but I do like that they switched around the points a lot. It helps us out a lot.
If I may add, they will buff PvP aspect for summoners as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially on their healing. So their Z, their Huzzah now heals 60% of the cat's health, as well as the iframe True Friend now heals 5% health per resist instead of 2%. What are those ground AoEs called again? The throwing fossil?
Oh, the nettles?
Nettles,
The
yes.
medals, yes.
The nettles now, enemies cannot block or counter
that
on the nettles.
Uh-huh.
And instead of not being able to charge on top of the nettles, they give you an outright debuff for 8 seconds, I believe, of charge disables.
Which is useful, very useful for a
Very,
summoner.
very
So for those of you who have enjoyed your summoner matches in PvP so far, just look forward to even more healing to make for more exciting and
Sumner
intense
via
gameplay.
Sumner.
North America, Blade and Summoner. The other interesting things to note is minor buffs here and there. Blade Masters get a slight damage upgrade on their left button draw. They changed the element to lightning, which is not really that applicable to us, but they did increase the damage fairly significantly in the grand scheme of things. An interesting change is on your Soul Blade Burst, your V. They've added, rather Blade Call, I guess it's called in North America, or something
Flock of
else. If you get the
Blades.
other tree. Flock of Blades, yes. You recover 24 focus over 12 seconds, which is actually very, very helpful, because focus generation is one of the things that really drives Blade Master damage. Hone Slash is a very expensive skill, and also staying in draw stance requires you to have focus, right? So having that constant regeneration really, really helps with your damage. In addition to that, assassins get a lot of snare dispels, which is one of the reasons why currently they have a lot of trouble against a class like a Force Master or something like that. And sometimes in PvE they can even be screwed over, because sometimes PvE mobs, if you get hit by certain moves of theirs, they will disable your charge, and that can make a fight become very difficult for you. So
No
assassins
more
will
teleporting
be-
on the spot.
Yes, that's correct. Very annoying. And so one of the things that's going to happen for assassins is that their F teleport skills, both of them, will actually disable disable the charging skill blocking. So when you SS, then you use your leaf shift, and then you use your leaf sunder. Both of those will remove snares. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Doc, I think infiltrate also removes it. Is that correct?
I'm not entirely sure.
Charge skill. I can't remember if that was this patch or maybe in the January patch it happens. I'm not sure.
I don't think
I'm not sure. I can't
assassins get changed much in the December patch.
Yes, they only get a few small changes, just those that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But currently, especially in the PvP scenario, assassins versus force masters can be very difficult to overcome because it's hard to get back into stealth. If the force master just plays carefully, as we saw Madoji do earlier this week, it could be quite a challenging matchup. So you can expect quite a few different skill changes, and as February 10th comes closer, we'll see more about that. But I think we can move on unless you guys have any last words to share, maybe about Lucien Tower. I think that's mostly going to be, it's a solo dungeon, basically, where you just go up a bunch of floors and fight different encounters. Not necessarily boss fights, because some of them are kind of trash mob killing or like AoE mob killing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically just think of it as individual challenges for your solo character. Do we have anything else to say about that?
Rewards? What can
Rewards?
What can we get out of it?
We get the upgrades from Lucien Tower, I believe, for
Pirate weapon?
Yeah, for the weapon and accessories.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, accessories, and also there is a Mushin Bopei, or
Yes.
Soul Shield.
The Endless Tower Soul Shield will mostly be crit oriented, so that would be pretty useful in PvE.
Yes, and especially when Spiral comes out, I seem to recall that there was a mixed Soul Shield set that you could get that would maximize your crit and minimize your health in some senses.
Yes.
That a lot of people liked to go for, so we can look to mix and match that a little bit. So Lucien Tower 1 to 7, BSH 45 plus 5, Homeland skills, skill changes, quality of life changes. Oh my god, Daka, they're giving us so many things.
If
So many
I may
things.
add, as for the quality of life changes, you can experience it at BnS3.com.
Yeah!
Yay!
Yeah! Quality of life on every front.
Yes.
That's right, we forgot to mention BnS3.com, Ace, plugging. Paci, is there, what communities do you play in? That was the question that I forgot to ask you. I asked you that you play, how you got into playing the solo, but what communities do you find yourself playing in? Obviously you're a streamer, and so you run your own guild. Well, not that one is associated with the other, but it is something that you do, right?
Right. Actually, I don't necessarily run the guild. The guild actually is just a group of friends who came together and decided that we wanted a certain atmosphere to play in while, so that we could enjoy the game in our own way. So it's me plus a bunch of other friends who created the guild, came together. It's just a community, honestly. So we're not actively recruiting. I get that question a lot. We're kind of just chilling, playing the game, getting down with all the content, Yeah.
Fun, cool. So that is what Paci does. Let's move on a little bit. There's one more news segment that we need to mention, and we'll talk about that later in the podcast, but ESL, a famed tournament organization, Prowess, has decided to begin their Community Cup tournaments. And it's the first step in what could be, a longer journey into competitive BnS PvP. And they've decided to start their own tournaments beginning on February 7th. So if you guys want to sign up for that, oh my goodness, I'm so unprepared. I don't have the link. I'm sorry. If somebody could grab the link for you guys, definitely check that out, ESL. And one of the things that's interesting to me, and one of the things that might make you guys want to check this tournament out especially, is, as far as I know, they're looking to maintain the 1 versus 1 competitive environment. So I'm not exactly sure if they're going to stream or allow spectating of the matches, but what that means for the competitors is that you get to play the whole tournament in the 1v1 spar scenario, which is different than how the Imperial BnS runs their tournaments, right? Because Imperial BnS, we want to showcase PvP skill to the community and stream it and spectate it and have a little fun with that. So, of course, there are downsides, right? The timeout is a little weird. Starting the game is a little weird. The format is a little weird, but ESL, I think they're going to maintain the format of the 1v1. So if you guys want to compete, go ahead and check that out. Taka, do you have anything to say?
They should really add a time limit to the BnS tournaments. No more 8 minute Sumner vs Sumner.
Sumner v Sumner. Oh god. Well, we can talk about that later during our PvP segment, but definitely the 8-minute timeout was an interesting experience. We've had many interesting experiences in BnS, but we're all growing with it and trying to roll with the punches, so to speak. And hopefully down the road we'll get some alternative option that would provide us better format and a better infrastructure to play under.
Spectator mode.
Spectator client. What? Okay, so ESL, we'll talk about that more Sundays, and that also means that this podcast might be changing times and changing days. Daka, we can't find a home. We're just like a lost cat in a cardboard box, just on the street. Somebody needs to pick us up and find us a consistent, nice, safe home to stay in. But Paci, you've made some beautiful, well-detailed guides, posted them on the official forums, and we have the links to them, so I can link that in the chat. Hopefully I don't get banned. Oh no, I see Elizabeth in the chat. She's getting a lot of heat for it. I'm sorry, but alright, there we go. That's the link for the newbies guide for anything you need to know when you're starting the game. And also we have the guide for Black Ramp supply chain. So as you said, Paci, you basically started getting interest in writing these guides because it was just something that you felt like you wanted to do, right?
Right.
So how much time? I mean, this thing is incredibly detailed. It's like an encyclopedia. I mean, I'm just skimming through it. There's so many sections to it. There's just so many words. I'm getting dizzy. How much work did you put into this?
Believe it or not, I actually streamed making these. I would do my dailies on Taiwan and then stream maybe for like an hour at the end, just doing the guide. So maybe altogether, the Black Ram supply chain guide maybe took me an hour or two to make. The Dummies guide I literally made sitting in a cafe after class, so maybe an hour to make. Just because it was a lot of things I had in my head that I wanted to get out there. So.
Well, certainly when you're running the dungeons over and over again, some things just, you start picking them up and it becomes more and more ingrained. But there's some very, very useful information. Let's start out talking about the Blade and Soul guide for dummies. The first question I have, I suppose, is there's a lot of things that you answer in here, but perhaps because you kind of titled it as like an FAQ, what are some of the things that people have asked that have been most frustrating for you that you really, really just wanted to answer with this guide?
You can actually tell when you read the guide where I get pretty salty. One of them is what's the best class to play? Whenever I see that in a stream, I just... Because, I understand. We all come from these past MMOs where there is this really overpowered class, Terra and Lancers. So, of course, like, people want to gravitate towards that class in order to, get somewhere, I guess. Same thing with, like, what's the easiest class to level with? And I'm just like, you only have to level once. What does it matter?
You only level once. Is that the new YOLO? Oh my god. You only level once. My goodness. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, another one that actually I'm really passionate about this question is, does gear matter in PvP? If not, what's the point of gear in this game? Because obviously this game has a really big esports scene and whatnot, so PvP is the reason a lot of people are migrating to this game, right? So people are like, okay, so soul shields and gear doesn't matter in arena 1v1, 3v3 arenas, so why am I gearing up? And the next patch coming out is exactly why all the people who like to just sit in arena should be gearing up a little bit through your dailies and whatnot, just the bare minimum to get by, because these Hungman levels and these Hungman skills that are coming out are going to be game changers, and fighting against them without them, yeah, you're going to cry. So play the game, please, just play the game.
Which actually brings up a good point, huh? When I'm thinking about it, they're gonna add 45 plus 5, but is the arenas going to be normalized to 45 plus 5?
I'm sure it carries over on any other server where I've played where the 45 plus 5 or more Hungman skills they've carried over into the arenas.
Because well, the thing is, when I played on KR, and I'm sure Daka can speak to this too, you actually, when there was 45 plus 5, the gear and the potions and the levels mattered, right? So you would actually just be 45 plus 3 fighting somebody who is 45 plus 5, or 45 fighting somebody who is 45 plus 5.
I believe Hungman's levels are also equalized.
Okay, because on KR currently everybody's equalized to 50 plus 15.
Yes.
Right.
But I
So-
should add that in terms of health, we are pretty similar. In terms of damage, KR has a bit more damage.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's that.
Interesting questions. Interesting questions. It'll all come down to what NC decided was the appropriate level to put into the arenas, because, like Paci was saying, unlocking these homewood skills is going to be really important, and leveling is something like your statistics get equalized, even though you get less skill points to spend. Your statistics will be leveled up to that point. So you're going to need to keep up with your homewood leveling. You're going to need to keep up with obtaining your skills and running those dungeons. So what else? I mean, you talk about gearing, you talk about the most OP class in the game, and then you give people details on how to move through the gear progression, right?
Right. A lot of the questions I get are, and I'm sorry if there's background noise, but questions on like how to upgrade your gear, how to upgrade your accessories while you're leveling, what's the best bow pay to get, or sorry, soul shields, what are the best soul shields to get. So I explain that, how to level. I also explain the interface for the gear progression. It outlines for you what weapons you'll need next, what materials and whatnot. So I point that out for people who are new and don't understand the weapon and accessory interfaces. I talk about gems, I talk about soul shields, what you can do with soul shields in terms of amplifying them with higher crit, because crit is very important in this game for a lot of classes. I explain what to do with those extra fodder pieces that nobody knows what to do. They just, eat up our space. I explain that you can break them down and turn them into different things, which is really, really awesome in this game. I like that function a lot. And then I go on to explain dailies a little bit. There are other guides out there that outline for you how much money you can make per day and what the best dailies are to do. So I left that for the other people. And then just some other little questions I see. I add on to it more and more as I see more and more questions pop up through streams. So it's definitely something I add on to and will be updating as we get level 50 and whatnot.
Right.
I need to learn how much money I can make per day. I'm so poor these days.
It's like 10 gold a day, which I haven't achieved yet, but I think it's a lot more time consuming than doing what I do. I get about 7 gold a day, so that extra 3.
Is it worth it?
I don't know.
Is it
We'll
worth
have to see.
I mean, you could just use a lot of people were complaining about the whole master looter ninja looting thing.
Oh yeah.
You could just do that and then sell everything to the auction house and make a ton of money.
If you do that in KR, your sandbox gonna get terrorized.
Yes, they will hunt you down. It's interesting too, because, well, to be fair, in KR I was fairly closed off from the community, but I never really experienced any like ninja looters ever. People usually try very hard too in the dungeons. They don't normally leave, and there's a lot of coaching that goes on. And of course, in KR you get the voice chat in party, and Koreans actually use that quite extensively. Of course, I don't understand anything they're saying. I just say, no Korean, English only. That was a very bad impression. I'm sorry for that. Sorry to the viewers. I'm sorry for anybody who felt hurt by my words and actions. But they use the microphone a lot, and they actually communicate and teach people how to run the dungeons. In North America, since the release of the game, within 4 weeks, this game has been out. 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks. My sense of time has gone straight out the window.
It's about 2 weeks.
2 weeks
and a half, maybe.
we have ninja looting, and it's happening quite frequently by the looks of it. I've been fortunate enough. I mean, I don't run so much PvE, and you guys are going to see that later in the show. I don't really run so much PvE myself, but it seems like a lot of people have been running into these issues. Have you guys been pugging at all?
I never run into issues so far.
I usually just run with my guild.
Yes, I usually, when I do PvE, I don't do PvE often, but when I do,
I do.
I run it with my guild. So, well, perhaps a topic to think about a little more in the future. But is there anything else you want to say about your Blade and Soul guide for dummies? It's made especially for me, I feel like. I think this is very helpful for me. And probably helpful for a lot of other people. So if you want to check that out, definitely go onto the official forums and find PopstarPaci's guide for dummies. Any final words to say about this particular guide?
No, we pretty much covered all of it. Like I said, I'll be expanding on it later. So if you guys find anything in the guide that's incorrect, definitely was rushed, like I said, an hour. So definitely correct me. And if you have any other questions, I'd actually really appreciate if you either added me on Twitter or put your questions in the forum post itself, and I'll definitely try and get to them if I see the question is really high in demand.
And Dakaringer has gracefully provided us. Oh my god, I actually did notice all three of us have matching Twitter and Twitch names. Oh my god. Round of applause for foresight on our behalf, or perhaps just having incredibly unpopular names. But he has provided you with the information for both of those.
Yes.
Follow us on Twitch and follow us on Twitter at those addresses. So, what we're going to do, Daka, we're going to go on a journey. We're going to do something that is possibly quite dangerous and will end in tears and chaos, and we don't have a fourth player. So we could take some time to grab the fourth player if you want. Do you think there's anybody on in your guild that we could grab to help make this go a little bit quicker? I feel like we could maybe do it with 3, but it might be a little difficult. I think you have time if you want to just get out of here and ask somebody in your guild.
I'll ask real quick.
Okay.
I can go ahead and
And in the meantime, you can talk about Paci's guide to the black ram supply chain.
Yes.
Po. Let's just call it Po.
Po.
That's what I'm used to calling it. Po Huarang, the Black Ram supply chain. You made a guide about this dungeon, and there's a lot of very useful information detailing all the mechanics and the attacks of the bosses. And so what we're going to do to the viewers in the chat right now, what we're going to do for you guys is actually run through this live and demonstrate to you exactly what these bosses do and show you how not to play in my case, and Daka and Paci are going to show you how to do it well. Okay, so you're going to get to see this from Dakaringer's perspective. He's going to be taking on probably a tanking role unless we get some KFM something on his Blade Dancer. And by the way, this guy is a very important lesson for you in Blade and Soul class balance, because the Blade Master and the Kung Fu Master have skills that increase their threat, and so they are generally considered as the primary tanks for the game. That does not mean that other classes cannot actually take on the tanking role, and Dakaringer will demonstrate that beautifully for you. He demonstrated that on his stream yesterday. It's definitely possible. The classes are very flexible in this game, and there's a lot that you can do with them, so don't feel too caught in a defining box by what people tell you about the classes. There's a lot of things that you can do if you use your skills correctly and you have skilled timing and you're very familiar with the game and their mechanics. So, Paci.
Yeah.
Black Ram supply chain. Once upon a time, when I played on the Korean servers, I went through it on level 50 plus 11 or something like that, and I kind of just ignored everything that the bosses did. But now it's time for me to learn how to do it properly.
Yes.
How do I do it properly? What will your guide teach me? let's run through the guide just a little bit.
Okay. So I have a table of contents there, and there's a couple chapters. I talk about, in the first one, some terminology and abbreviations I have throughout the guide that, I don't know, some people may not understand, but I'm pretty sure most people, but I put it there just in case. Class roles. I go really in depth, in my opinion, for class roles and what you bring to the dungeon. I feel like level 45, actually no, it's a common theme throughout the game that each class brings something really, really important to the dungeon, whether it be, you know, some sort of stall mechanic with a grab or grapple, some sort of like tanking mechanisms or anything like that. So I go in depth with that. Then I talk about the mini bosses throughout the guide, since they're the least important and you can kind of just face roll on your keyboard. It's not a big deal for those guys. And then I talk in depth about each main boss, their mechanics, the phases, how long it takes for them to invade, especially in 4-mans, and then I talk about skills that can be used in the dungeon that help out a lot with some of the mechanics and stuff like that. Talk about loot table and the important drops from the dungeon that you'll be needing, like your weapon upgrade and your accessory upgrades, and as well as some pretty cool cosmetics.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
that's a very, very detailed,
yes.
very detailed guide. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go over to the in-game screen, and we've grabbed our dailies and we've zoned in. So some of our gear is absolutely terrible. I'll let you know that my gear is top of the notch profane Jiangxi with that sick awakened infernal sword. We are ready to attack this dungeon. I think other players may have better gear, but it's definitely possible. I'm going to show you guys exactly what to do. Now, in dungeons in Blade and Soul, Daka, it's very, very important to know how to run through the dungeon itself, right? So Dakaringer is going to show you exactly the proper way to skip mobs, and hopefully if we do this right, we do not get tagged and start crying and get killed, get murdered in cold blood. So the first thing we'll do, Daka, is run up this wall, and why don't you guide us through the rest of how we progress through this first area?
Okay, so first thing you should do is run up onto this tower, glide all the way over here, and
We're
see
gliding.
those.
We're flying.
You see those fences? Think of this as as hurdles, and then like just jump over them.
Yes, and
you
be careful not to get jumped on. If you're following behind, be careful not to actually get hit by jump attacks of enemies chasing them. You need to be very mindful of the AoE attacks that enemies have. So Daka and I have successfully made it up to this top, and in doing so, we can actually just stand up here and the enemies will not be able to reach us. And Daka, you can show them what happens if they get hit in combat. If they desperately do not want to fight them, if you get hit in combat, hopefully you don't die, but show them how to climb back up.
Okay, so in order to climb back up, you need to hit F12 and get into classic mode, as you can see right here. And then to get back up, you click on this little ledge here, jump, and then onto the next ledge and jump again.
Amazing. You're a magician.
I can do that even while in combat.
Blade dancers don't have magic spells. How did you do that?
Oops.
A little bit more difficult, but it definitely can save a lot of time because nobody
There we
likes
go.
doing that. No, oh my god, it shot me! I'm being attacked! Help!
That late tap.
I didn't even notice. Alright, so we're just gonna jump over to the other side. And, oh my god, do I have to start at like half health? No, I want to eat a dumpling first. So, before we pull the boss, we're going to look through Paci's guide and read up what she has to recommend for fighting this boss. And then, Daka is going to walk us through the strategy for how we're going to handle Sashimi, Gatekeeper Sashimi, and his buddies, his aides. So, let's go take a look at the guide and look under mini bosses and mechanics. And you have Gatekeeper Sashimi. Paci, what does this boss do? What do we need to watch out for, and how are we going to handle some of the moves that they utilize?
Okay, so the obvious one are the two mobs that are there. They're I don't know if I included in the guide, I might have missed it, but they do these lightning attacks that are really, really annoying, can hit pretty hard. So it's really important that you have somebody in your party to either tank them, or what I like to do is the Aoe method, where I position my cat in a way to hold the boss and the mobs all together so that I can have my team AoE them down as quick as possible before the first phase goes on. So you've either got to take them off to the side and make sure you have somebody designated to hold them, but that also means you miss out on one member of DPS for the boss, or you can just AoE them down and keep, all 6 or all party members on the boss at all times. He's got phases. His first phase is generic attack phases that every boss does. He'll thrust his little trident thing in front of him. You can CC him to stop it. Then there's a cleave attack, which attacks in a cone in front of him. So anybody in front will be hit, and it hits pretty hard. Then he does a sword thrust, where he will attack in front of him twice, and then the second attack will actually knock back the target. Me being a ranged person, I've actually never experienced this, so I don't know how annoying it is. And usually when I play melees, I'm usually an assassin or something like that, so I sit behind. It's pretty easy for me. And then he'll go into phase 2, which is the phase I think most people have the most trouble with, is where he will become invulnerable and then dive underwater and go through a series of different mechanics. He'll dive underwater and shoot water missiles at you. So
4 of them.
4 of them, correct. Somebody in your party needs to protect the rest of your party, or unless you can do it yourself, from these missile attacks. I personally, as a summoner, have a protect from range, which is my pedal storm. Anybody standing under it will be immune to these attacks. After that, he will boil the water. And since we don't have a Force Master in this party, we can't really do the ice mechanic that Force Masters do, but I would like to mention it's really, really important to, or at least really beneficial to have a Force Master in your party, because the Force Master can ice the entire party and make them invulnerable, so each person alone doesn't have to iframe. Or Summoner, I can Dandelion the entire party. The first 2 attacks will be dodged through the invulnerability, and then the last hit you guys have to iframe. After he does that, he will dive back underwater. Anybody in the AoE, there will be a red AoE and 6-man. If you're caught in that when he dives back underwater, you'll be knocked back. It's not a good time.
Yes.
And then he will charge. In order to stop this charge, you have to counter him. And every class can do this. I highlight this in my guide because I want everybody to understand this mechanic and to not rely on your party members. I'm a big advocate of learning mechanics yourself and learning how to deal with things yourself instead of relying on Blade Master or Kung Fu Master to block this. Every class can do it and needs to be talented. Force Masters can do it through their Fire Tap. Blade Dancers can do it through their Spin. I can do it through my Dandelion. Then there is, natural counters with the block classes and whatnot. Then the counter to on Assassin, so on and so forth. I explained the skills that you can do. So he'll do that once he's disabled. He'll become knocked down. You can grapple or hold him down for extra DPS, and then he'll go back into attack phase 1. So he'll continue through these phases until he enrages and wipes the entire party. So it's a huge DPS race. You have to make sure you're on point with all the mechanics and making sure you're doing effective DPS.
I believe he does this 3 times before he enrages.
Correct.